This is Tom Fox. I'm the Compliance Evangelist, and I'd like to welcome you to the November series of 1 month to a more effective compliance program series that I'm running in 2017. This month, we're going to take a look at 1 month of 360 degrees of communication in compliance. This month's sponsor is Dun & Bradstreet. The only thing that is constant right now in the regulatory environment is change. Supply chain leaders and compliance professionals alike continue to struggle with how to best adequately identify, screen, and gain visibility into ownership structures of third parties and or customers so that they understand exactly who they are doing business with. Companies can knowingly finance goods that are potentially obtained illegally or sold on the black market. Procurement teams that are unaware of third-party activities and have antiquated systems, they put their company at risk. Without proper visibility, these teams could unknowingly be funding terrorism or even engaging in human trafficking. In-depth research is needed to identify ultimate beneficial owners and third-party risks. No business ties to corrupt practices such as human trafficking or money laundering is going to self-report, so companies must take this work on themselves and obtain third-party data needed to determine risk, mitigate exposure, and protect their brand and comply with regulations. Dun & Bradstreet offers an end-to-end comprehensive solution to help organizations tackle this exact complexity. Leverage Dun & Bradstreet's complete due diligence reporting to know your vendor and your third-party partners. Do not expose yourself to undue risk. Contact Dun & Bradstreet today to learn more about vendor onboarding, supply risk management, and comprehensive compliance check. This month I'm going to tackle the concept of 360 degrees of communication and compliance. We're going to take a look at it from a variety of ways and mechanisms. We're going to consider the Chief Compliance Officer and his or her role in communications. We're going to take a look at how you can facilitate a two-way conversation of communications while sitting in the CCO suite. We're going to consider some of the leadership and other components of a CCO's role and how they will help you have a more robust and indeed holistic approach to compliance. We're going to consider the bottom-up approach to communications by utilizing communications techniques for your employees, third parties, contractors, and those that may come into contractual relationship with your company through the supply chain. We're going to consider 360 degrees of communications through operationalization of compliance and culture. It's going to be a very interesting month. I think as a CCO you will learn quite a bit, and at the end of the month you will not only have information which will allow you to be a more well-rounded CCO, but bring a much more holistic approach to your compliance function. My year-long series of 1 month to a more effective compliance program and the November edition of 1 month of 360 degrees of communication and compliance are a part of the Compliance Podcast Network. Day 10, limit your self-reliance, learn to ask for help. Many compliance professionals in the corporate world work long and hard to rise to the senior management level in their organizations. It takes subject matter expertise, hard work, and sometimes propitious good fortune to get to the C-suite level in any large organization. However, many of the skills which will work to get you there do not always serve you in the context of a 360-degree view of communication at the senior management level. One thing many compliance practitioners, particularly those who have grown up professionally, have in common is self-reliance. Not every lawyer or compliance practitioner is a type A driven personality, but many are. In many ways, it is what makes us a success. However, in the corporate world, there are limits to self-reliance. Put another way, if you do not have a culture where everyone appreciates the importance of the role in showing the type of behavior that is expected within your organization, then you are probably not doing a good job of driving culture. This was explored in a New York Times corner office column by Adam Bryant, where he interviewed Lori Fauché, the chief executive officer of the Prudential Insurance Group. A key lesson is to ask for help. You can obviously think that you can get through a brick wall and you can make it happen, and you can be self-reliant. But if you overwork some teams early on, that can lead to the lesson about asking for help. It is okay not to have all the answers and not to be able to do everything, and put up your hand and say, I need help. Building on the Wiseman concept of multipliers, you can see how you can expand the influence of not only yourself, but also the corporate compliance function. You need to prioritize. You simply can't do everything. You need to be able to say no or not now, and that's an important lesson for every compliance officer. Another interesting component of this is transparency. You should learn to share your thoughts so that people will learn to follow them. An important message is, it's like being on a train and you're in the front of the train and you're in the dark, but you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. But there are people who are toiling in the back. They're throwing coal in the engine. They're working the cars, and that's all they know. The CEO or CCO should be at the front of the train, but your job is to shorten the distance between you and the back of the train so everyone can see what the CCO sees in the front. In other words, prioritize and start the slogging work of going through the issues in front of you. It not only gives you some semblance of control, but also helps you to focus on doing the next right thing. As a leader, others in your team and cascading down will take their clues from you and begin to operate in the same analytical manner. Not only should you have personal transparency, you should expect it from others within your organization. Your direct reports should listen to what you say, but they should also ask questions. You should expect them to understand what's going on and be able to respond to a question of how it's going. So think about this in the context of Wei Chen and when she was the compliance counsel at the Department of Justice. If you've talked to anyone who went in front of Wei Chen after the initial presentation of the compliance program and how it was performing, Wei Chen would ask, well, how do you know that? What's your data? What backs up what you're saying? What does the data show you about the effectiveness of your compliance program? It's certainly one thing when people start telling anecdotes, and it's another thing when you say, well, we keep track of that or this and we measure it. Make sure that you are into analytical approaches, because this is the way that you as a compliance practitioner can demonstrate the effectiveness of your compliance program up the chain to not only the chief compliance officer, but senior management. So what about resilience and perseverance? If you talk to people about this in the hiring process, it gives you a hint on some key characteristics. When you're working in big companies, you have to find a way to navigate and negotiate to an end result. Remember, it could be a winding path. Make sure that people feel they know how to do that and they do it in a way that is respectful of the system. You'll have more success in communications and in the use of social media if you first start with a relationship, getting to know the leaders in a given geographic market within your organization. And of course, this brings up the key point that is really a theme throughout this month's commentary, which is get out of the ivory tower, get out in the field, go out to the international locations and meet people. Remember Aesop and Aesop's fables? Well, he noted many, many eons ago, or at least 2,500 eons ago, that the race is not won by the fastest, nor the strongest, but is often won by the steadiest. Many of the characteristics which allow you to rise within an organization may need to be ameliorated at the C-suite level. The lessons around a 360-degree approach that we've talked about today in both leadership and communications give you an excellent starting point. So ask for help, but empower your team to give you the information. demand accountability, but demand accountability and transparency in the form of, what does the data show? It's one thing to say you're being effective, but are you being effective? So channel your inner Wei Chin and ask, what does the data show? So what are today's 3 key takeaways? Well, the most significant one is what we started with, which is learn to ask for help. In the corporate world, this can be a powerful tool. It can make you allies. It can empower those you work with, because if they are part of the solution, they become the solution, and they will help make that solution work for you going forward. Number 2, as a CCO, share your thoughts. Let people know what you're thinking. Let people know where you're going, because by doing so, they'll follow you. Think about the leading the train example. I found that excellent. And number 3, leadership often involves employees taking a winding or different path. So this is yet another reason to give this explanation to them. This is Tom Fox. I hope you've enjoyed day 10 of 1 month to 360 degrees of communication and compliance, and I hope you'll join me tomorrow for day 11. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, and I'd like to thank you for listening to this episode of 1 month to 360 days of communication and compliance. If you have listened to this podcast on iTunes, I would greatly appreciate it if you would rate our podcast, as it would help in our rankings and also help get the word out about the only daily compliance podcast involving the nuts and bolts of compliance. Also, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me at tfox@tfoxlaw.com. Finally, I'd like to thank our sponsor for this month, Dun & Bradstreet. I hope you will join me tomorrow for another episode. The podcast series in November, 1 month to 360 degrees of communication, is a part of the Compliance Podcast Network.